another section of learning how to answer the questions. Basically, today we are looking at grade 12 life science and hormonal test DNA, the topic DNA. Okay, let's quickly go to the questions. We are starting with multiple choice where we are having 1.1 is saying various options are provided as possible answer to the following questions. Choose the correct answer and write only 1.1 A to D next to the question number 1.1 to 1.1.10. Answer in the answer book for example 1.11. The answer is D. That is an example that you are given. So, which one of the following best describe nucleic acid and nucleotides? Let's move on to A then. A is saying nucleic acids are monomers. Nucleic acid are monomers. Nucleotides. This answer doesn't make sense because we are saying the monomers for nucleic acid are nucleotides. It's the other way around. The monomers for nucleic acids are the nucleotides. So this becomes wrong. Let's move on to B. B is saying nucleotides are monomers of nucleic acid. This answer is correct, right? This answer becomes correct here because nucleotides are monomers of nucleic acid. Nucleotides, you go on to check all the answers before you give in your final answer. So nucleotides are large molecules and nucleic acid are small molecules. Nucleic acid are acids and nucleotides are bases. So which means all these answers becomes wrong. So we have our final answer is B. B becomes our correct answer. Nucleotides are monomers of nucleic acids because the nucleotides are building blocks of the nucleic acid. Now let's move on to 1.12. If 10% of the base in a molecule of DNA are adenine, what is the ratio of adenine to guanine in the same molecule? Right, so first let's deal with adenine. The moment you are given 10%, you know that the total is out of 100. Which means the total is out of 100 because percent it equates to 100, right? So if 10% of the bases in a molecule of DNA are adenine, what is the ratio of adenine to guanine? Right, let's go back to the pairing of this nitrogenous base. It goes like A goes with T, then G goes with C. So that's how we pair it. So which means if we are having adenine with 10%, adenine, if our adenine here is having 10%, if adenine is having 10%, which means also thymine is having what? 10%, because remember this is DNA. So when adenine is having 10%, thymine is having percent, which means both, if we add 10 plus 10, which means we have 20%. Okay, so adenine and thymine take 20%. So we're saying A and T takes what? 20%. 20%. So which means we're left with G and C. When we subtract 100, when we subtract 20 from 100, we are left with 80%. So which means G and C both share what? 80%. G and C both share 80%, right? So when G and C shares 80%, which means now we are going to divide between G and C, guanine and cytosine. So which means now guanine is having what? 40 was divided by 2. Divided by 2, which means it goes to 40. So we end up having guanine is 40, cytosine has 40. So now the question is saying adenine to guanine. So we are having if A is 10%, if A is 10%, then guanine is 40%. What is the ratio? The ratio is 10 is to 40. Right. So 10 is to 40 is the same as what? 1 is to 4. So our answer now becomes what? D. I hope you understand. The answer becomes D there. Right. We are done with this one. Let's move on to the Next question. Let's move on to the next question. Give the correct biological term for each of the following description. Write only the term next to the question number. Write only the term next to the question number. Okay. So our answer here is D. Right. Then 1.2, give only the term, right? Let's see what we have here. We have 1.21, a section of DNA molecule that codes for specific characteristic. Okay. A section of DNA that codes for specific characteristics. A section of DNA molecule that codes for a specific characteristic. What do we have here? We have a gene that codes for specific characteristic. We have a gene here. That's a gene. Okay. Then 1.22, a phase in cell that occurs. A phase in cell that occurs before cell division. So before cell division, we have interphase. That's the first stage. So that's the phase that we are going to have here. Interphase, right? Interphase. Then the nitrogenous base found in messenger RNA, but not in DNA. Because remember, on DNA, we are saying A, T, G, C. So which means A, G, C is shared in both RNA and DNA. What is not shared, what is replaced here is thymine. So on RNA, we will have A, U, G, C. So what is our answer now? The answer becomes uracil. 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 That is our answer. The answer becomes uracil. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question, 1.3. Indicate whether each of the statement in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, or none of the items in column 2. Write A only, B only, both A and B, or none next to the question number. Okay, so let's start with 1.31. Genetic material carries genetic materials. Okay, so what carries a genetic material? We have the gene there is A. Then we are saying, what about chromosome? Because a gene, let's go on to explanation about a gene. A gene is a segment of chromosome. So our answer here becomes both. Answer becomes both A and B. Both A and B. Our answer there becomes both. So our answer becomes both A and B. So the answer is correct there. Then bonds that hold nitrogenous bases together in a DNA molecule. We have weak hydrogen bond. Yes, weak hydrogen bond becomes the answer because that's the bond that hold hydrogenous bases together in a DNA molecule. What about the peptide bond? The peptide bond holds a amino acid. So our answer there becomes A only. A only, that's the answer. The answer becomes A only. Don't forget A only. That's the answer there. A only. Right. Then discovered the double helical structure of DNA. Right. We have Francis Crick, James Watson. What is our answer there? The answer becomes both Francis Crick and James Watson. Because now we have they actually developed the DNA using the images from Franklin. They discovered the double helix structure using the images from Rosalind Frank images. So now our answer here becomes both A and B. It becomes both A and B. Both A and B. Both A and B. Right. Your answer becomes both A and B here. Okay. Let's move on to question 2. Study the diagram below which represent part of a nucleic acid molecule and answer the question. That follow. Okay. So the moment you see a diagram like this with the double stranded structure, this one is a double stranded structure. So you are seeing there is a bond here that is joining the nucleotides. Mind you, these are the nucleotides where we have the phosphate group, the sugar, and the nitrogenous base. So the moment you see a structure like this, you know definitely it's the DNA. Definitely it's the DNA. Okay, now the question comes, identify the nucleic acid shown in the diagram. Your answer is DNA. Your answer is DNA, right? It's D. DNA. Give one visible reason for your answer. Why are you saying that this is a DNA? Right, if we check very well, look at this, the hydrogen bond. Presence of hydrogen bond, this presence of hydrogen bond, presence of hydrogen bond. That makes you identify that this is a DNA, the presence of hydrogen bond. What else are you saying? This is the double stranded because we have this part and also this part. These are nucleotide, so they're double stranded. So you say this also is the structure that can help you identify that this is a DNA. So you asked about one visible, you've already given two because you're observing that this is double stranded, you're observing a hydrogen bond, you've answered the question, you get a 1 mark. Then label part, the following part, part 1. The circle, this one is phosphate group. This one is phosphate group. That's one, okay? Right, part 2, because now you know this is a DNA. So you cannot just say sugar because the moment you say sugar, the answer becomes wrong. So this is a deoxyribose. This is deoxyribose sugar. Because already you know that this is a DNA. So on DNA, we find a what? Deoxyribose sugar. And on question 3, part 3, the nitrogenous base 3, you cannot just say this is nitrogenous base because already you are given A, which means it's adenine. So we know that adenine goes with what? We know that adenine goes with thymine, right? So what is a nitrogenous base 3 and base pairing? Adenine, if this is adenine, A, you're given. So which means 3 becomes what? Thymine. 3 becomes thymine. 3 becomes thymine. Okay, right. You've answered your question there. 3 becomes a thymine. Okay, right. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 2.5 and 2.6. Next question, which is question 2.5 and 2.6, which is question 2.